Again. Okay. Now it's recording. I saw something that was like, if you want to start recording, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All
Funny.
right. So we can edit out the beginning, but I can do another intro.
Just get
Also, should I describe you as like an independent journalist? Or no, we're just two ladies.
two chicks.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like
Okay.
Boyd, but I guess you could say that. But yeah, no, I know
I
somebody.
am so.
It's like you're like a Twitter mom. I said, do not ever call me that.
Well, that was good practice. All right. Well, take two.
Okay.
Hey there, and welcome. Oh, I'll start again.
Okay.
Hi there, and welcome to the first episode of Previously Prohibited. I'm Janine Eunice, and my co-host is Melissa Whitty. We met on Twitter over our sort of dissident views on a variety of subjects, from COVID-19 to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And we thought that we would start a podcast to discuss some of our views that tend to not be aired by the mainstream establishment. And we both do our research and put in the work. So I think we have a lot to offer. And one of the subjects that's a rather interesting topic of conversation today is the drones that have been sighted over New Jersey. I don't think there's any question that there have been a lot of drones over New Jersey in the last week or so. And where they're coming from is the big question. So, Melissa, where are they coming from? Another planet?
Yeah, it's a first encounter or it's the Iranians. Flip a coin. No, so it is interesting because it's been going on for like a month. I haven't paid. I hate aliens. I hate aliens.
Oh, it's been going on for a month. I thought it was only like a week. I hadn't heard of it.
No.
Okay.
I have let me see if I can pull up the history. It's been going on for a little while now. And yeah, okay. So look, the Picatinny Arsenal, which is located on the Picatinny military base. It was just kind of like in the middle of the state-ish. The first confirmed sighting was November 13th. So
oh wow, okay. Yeah.
And they have, let's see, looks like about 15 confirmed sightings of these big drones, like massive drones. Yeah, when I first heard about it, I'm like thinking, hobby drone flying around, who cares, whatever. And then there was that, did you see where that guy down in Georgia or Florida, one of the two, shot the Amazon delivery drone out of his yard?
Oh, I didn't.
It's so funny to me that he just like pulled out the shotgun and literally just took the whole thing out. And
oh wow.
So that's what I was kind of thinking when it first kind of came on.
Right.
And then, but here, like the last couple of days, what really kind of woke me up was this congressman. For everybody that doesn't know, the congressman from New Jersey's 2nd district, Jeff Van Drews. He goes on Fox News on Wednesday, and he says that he has talked to someone that he sits on the transportation committee, and he has talked to people high up in the know who he trusts, who are trustworthy, and they say that the Iranians have parked a mothership off of our coast and are launching these drones at Jersey.
And for regular people who don't necessarily, aren't as aware of the sort of dynamics going on around Iran, there's a lot of interest, let's say, from certain portions of the American public and other countries in getting us to go to war with Iran, which would be disastrous for the American people financially and otherwise. So, and for a sitting congressman to say this has a rather large impact. I mean, this was going pretty viral, I think. I had a lot of people I knew texting me like, oh my God, is Iran about to attack us?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was like instantaneous. It just took off like wildfire, which again, I think because I've just been around the military a bunch, like immediately I'm like, number one, that would be Well, number one, if a Iranian ship ever even got within, I think, 1,000 miles of the American coast, we would never hear anything else. It would just be 24/7
Right.
wall to wall coverage.
Right.
We would be blowing it up. We would be invading. Like there's just no question about it. We
And
are
they only have one ship, right? The mothership that could do this, and it was
right.
confirmed
So
to be in a
so
different
there's a
location.
little bit of truth to what he said. He said that they deployed it a month ago, and what happened was they actually did outfit one of their ships into like a drone ship, right? I don't even know what that entails, but they set it up so that it could be serve as like this mothership where the drones could come and go, and they so it was spotted in a harbor in the Gulf in November 12th was the last satellite image, and then it had moved from that port, and on November 28th there was another satellite image of it, and it was in the Strait of Hormuz, like at one of
Oh,
their harbors and whatnot. So again, it does exist, and they did move it about a month ago, but no, like I was
but to a totally different place than the east coast of the United States.
yeah, to still within their territory, which is so
Right.
crazy. And I was telling Janine earlier that the Iranians have, to our knowledge, have only ever been in the Atlantic Ocean one time, June 2021, and they were going to Venezuela, which is really weird though. If you look it up to see if they actually docked, I couldn't actually confirm whether or not they had docked, but that was kind of the
Hmm.
speculation that they were headed to Venezuela. But they're still like way down in South America, Atlantic Ocean territory, not even anywhere near us. So the idea that they just, deployed this ship, and then what do you know, a month later, they just pop up out of nowhere right off the
Right.
coast, start launching drones, is just ridiculous. And plus, we already know that the drones were sighted when the ship was still in its port, like in its off, in its shipyard, excuse me. So
Right.
he's just an idiot. I,
Right, right. I thought it was funny that Elon Musk, as we mentioned earlier, made fun of the idea that it was Iran. He did like a tweet meme, sort of mocking the idea, and that's been surprising to me because Musk has been very much towing the Israel line on basically every subject. And
right.
for those viewers who aren't familiar, it's Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, is really desperate to draw us into a war with Iran, and has been for some time. And I think there's some reasonable speculation that Van Drew's sort of baseless accusation was driven perhaps by that incentive. Um,
Yeah, I think his
yeah,
his he's like a Republicans in general aren't, I don't want to say they're not that big of recipients of APAC money, but like house-wise, they're cheap dates. They don't have to get paid nearly as much as the Democrats.
yeah,
Everybody gets
right,
bought, but their price is
yeah,
pretty significantly lower. But I did
right. But they
say,
all have a handler, right? As Thomas
oh
Massey
yeah, they
was
all
saying.
Van Drew's is actually interesting because he used to be a Democrat, and then
Oh,
in 2019 he switched
yeah.
parties.
Oh,
And
wow, I didn't know that.
right, and yeah, he's just kind of a boob, but he uh so he's speculating about that, and the Pentagon immediately came out and was like, we have no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
No mothership off of the coast. This is not a thing. Okay, like calm down. I had like little MAGA grandmas, so sweet, writing me DMs, worried. I was so annoyed. I was so angry at that congressman.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, world. Why would you do that? You
It's
know?
extremely irresponsible.
Yeah,
I mean, it gets people extremely scared, and given that there's sort of been this drumbeat for war with Iran, which would be, in my opinion, very detrimental to the American people as well as the Iranian people.
it would.
Um, yeah,
Iran is again not even. I think sometimes Americans get a little emboldened because they've watched, you watch people like Assad fall in Syria, right? Or
yeah,
Lebanon, obviously Hamas, um, and I think we really lose touch with reality about the idea of actually fighting, like even a semi-peer um, military, not even,
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call Iran like a pure military by any means, but it's not just some, ragtag militia. It's not like
Right.
a resistance group. It's like a legit
Right.
nation with a leader, slight form of democracy that, they do have some say in the leadership per se, at least in the government. And then, so it's not like, Saddam
Right.
and dictatorship, them falling over, or even like Assad and whatnot. And
Right.
they are like, I mean, they have decent funding, and the country has legitimate resources to bargain with. I just think that sometimes we are really, when I say bargain with, I mean to keep itself afloat, like the way Russia has
Right.
been. Yeah.
Right.
And
Why do you
so,
think Netanyahu is so desperate to get us into war with Iran? What's his motive?
because he sees them as the ultimate, as a threat to his power.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably going to tick a lot of people off, but I think it's pretty clear that he
Isn't
has
that what we're supposed to do?
definitely tamed the beasts. There is no other opposition in the region to him whatsoever.
Yeah.
The Gulf states have pretty much just rolled over like kittens for him. They're all Iran is left, the only thing left. And
Right.
then
And it's pretty obvious that his intention is to expand the borders of Israel as much as possible. I mean, that's why they're attacking Syria right now. That's why they're trying to expand into Lebanon and northern Gaza.
yeah. I mean, people talk about the Greater Israel Project. I thought it was interesting. There's a woman, Daniela Weiss. Do you know who I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah, I know. The one who does the settlement auctions or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And early on, after October 7th, she gave an interview with the New Yorker. And I actually kind of appreciate her in a way, because she doesn't fluff. She's
honest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hesitate to call her honest, because I think that she'd lie in a heartbeat if it benefits her.
Yeah.
I just think she doesn't care what you think of her. So she's not afraid to say what she's thinking,
Right.
And she's truly not really interested in your approval whatsoever. So she has no problem laying it out there. And she was really honest about wanting the the land that was promised to them in Numbers 34, which is from the Euphrates all the way down to Sinai, which is through the middle of
from the river to the sea.
Yeah. It's a totally different river.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm sorry. Can you guys hear that? That's my dog.
No.
I have a little puppy, and she is like, "Why are you shutting me out?"
I can't hear it actually. So
okay, good. Yeah. So she what was I gonna say? She laid that out early on. I think it was a New Yorker article. It was like end of October and she talked about that this is our chance. This is our opportunity right now.
Like you mean October 7th, after October 7th,
right? It was, in fact, she was saying it's not just about Gaza. It's about taking what's ours. And it's interesting the way that a lot of the stuff that has happened, especially with Hezbollah falling the way that it did, I hesitate to say that. I think that Israel had a heads up on 10/7, and I think that I don't think that they cooperated in any way, but I do think that they let it happen because it was politically convenient for a lot of things, a lot of reasons, and with all Netanyahu's troubles, legal troubles, corruption trials, and everything like that, that I wouldn't be surprised at all if we know that they had a heads up. We know that they
definitely had a heads up.
Right. We know that the Egyptians, but it's not just that. When you really start to look into it, it's fascinating. They pretty much received a hard copy of the plan of Hamas's plan. something like, I think it was like January of 2023. They actually passed it around to all of their security units, and they
Wow.
even had a name for it, a special name for it. But they said it was too ambitious for Hamas. But
Right. Well, that's one of the theories, is that they knew about it, but they get this kind of intel all the time, and so they didn't necessarily take it that seriously, or they like didn't know what date it would be. So I would say for me the jury's out on like how much they knew. They certainly were given a warning. I don't think that's disputed by anybody.
right, yeah, no, they were definitely given a warning, but I genuinely do actually think that they knew it wasn't just a little bit. I have a long thread that I've written on it, and I went through and I had all of the dates pulled out and everything. But you can find it. Israeli media is
Yeah.
actually refreshingly more upfront about so much
Oh,
of this.
sure, yeah. It's
So
crazy how Yeah.
American media is just crap. Okay, it is just
Yeah.
filtered crap. No,
Yes.
I mean the Israelis. I mean, and God bless them, because they actually are pretty fearless in putting this stuff out, stuff that just would never in a million years see the light of day in America. And
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, our media is completely overtaken by, you know,
yeah,
people
isn't
whose
it weird?
interests are,
Yeah,
yes. It's
you know, it's so bizarre. And so,
Well,
but
that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, right? I mean, the media has become the point of journalists in the media, and that's why they're protected in the First Amendment, is that they're supposed to provide like a check on the government. And instead, the media in our country has just become sort of an arm of the government and just doing their bidding. Mostly, I mean, honestly, mostly for the Democrats, but you have like Fox News, which I would say acts more in service to the Republicans, but they're not questioning any of it. And that is supposed to be the media's job. Rather, they've just been in cahoots with them. And I mean, that's why we learn about things months later, like the Biden administration covered up evidence that Israel was trying to stop aid from getting into Gaza. This kind of stuff is what the media should be reporting on.
right, it's absolutely. I mean, it's bizarre and then a little scary in a way too. I think because everything is just it's so heavily filtered. It's so centered around the power structures, around reinforcing the power structures
Yeah,
already in place. That and we saw it. I mean, especially with COVID, we saw it.
100%.
If you
100% of,
We
yeah.
saw it with COVID. We saw it with the vaccine. Even if you don't even just buy, like, say you don't buy into like the dangers of the vaccine, just the efficacy of the vaccine.
Right.
It was plain as day. It was published by the distributors, with their clinical trial summaries. We didn't test this on asymptomatic infections.
Right.
We didn't test this on transmission, and yet our government came out, bold-faced lied, said it stopped both, and then it took a year, and it was just so maddening because it was like, okay, but you would see this, but then the actual produce, like the Pfizer clinical trial summary, quite literally in the corner at the bottom, and this was published in December 2020, said that we didn't test any of this stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
I was so maddened because I was lucky enough to be friends with Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulldorff. I still am. But I had asked them in early 2021, like in January, so I'm like, should I get this vaccine? And they were like, no, like not for your age group. It doesn't stop transmission, hasn't been tested for that. And frankly, like you can't know the long-term side effects of something that hasn't been around long term. And like Martin Kulldorff is one of the top vaccine safety specialists in the entire world. And then I heard like government people, media just parrot this bullshit about how it's safe and effective. And I was like, wait a second, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. And nobody would like listen to them. It was so infuriating. And that, I mean, COVID, even before that, COVID had opened my eyes because I also, like very early on, I was just like, wait a second, we're going to do these unprecedented lockdowns without even thinking about it, without even a real policy discussion, without a public debate. Like, are you crazy? Do you not realize the economic and psychological implications of doing this to a country?
Oh, yeah, well,
And yeah, that
we saw it play out. We saw the psychological consequences play out
yeah,
in the riots,
yeah.
people that got ascribed to all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, you'll never convince me that that wasn't honestly just a result of locking people in their homes for 8 weeks.
Of course it was. I remember. So I was living in New York City at the time. I remember when it happened, and all my friends were like, "What was this, May or something?" They were like, "We're going to go to a protest," and I was like, "What? You guys have been talking about how we can't leave our apartments for the last 2 months, and now we're going to go to a protest with massive numbers of people?" And they weren't like, my friends weren't people who thought it was okay to hang out with people outdoors. They wouldn't do that either. And they're like, "Well, no, wait, this is a public health thing because it's Black people's lives." And I'm like, okay, help me. I don't get the logic here.
I know. Well, for me, I was like, I don't actually care because maybe this is going to snap everyone out of it.
Yes, I thought that too.
Yeah.
But no, the media was very effective at convincing people like there's this exception for if a Black person is killed by police, then COVID stops. But otherwise, COVID spreads.
The only thing that can stop COVID is protest racism.
Yes.
It actually was the vaccine all along. We just didn't know. It's so it was just like this maddening capture, right? And then so we see the way that the media it was just worthless. And even the quote unquote dissonant media was worthless. But then what we also saw was that, so there's this massive hole, right? That people are hungry. They know they're being lied to. They know they're being fed bullshit, but nobody's stepping up. And so you have the crazies come out from the other side.
Right.
They fill the void. And then everything is just so much, because they're saying some truth, but then you have to weed through every little thing they say because,
Yeah. No, sorry, I'm gonna pause it and get some water. It's so back to the drone issue. What is your theory about what's going on?
I think it's the government. I think it's, well, I don't think it's the Pentagon itself. I think it's a contractor of some sort. You've got Palantir. They just teamed up with that it's Palmer Lucky's company. I can't remember the name of it. It's another one from like Lord of the Rings or something. But they make drones. They're, military drones. So I think it's some kind of program like that. I don't think it's being ran by the government, but I do think they know exactly who is running it. And I think they're probably testing their technology on tracking, like using the drones for facial recognition. And they're probably, and that's why they're deploying them in residential areas. I did see something the other day that I thought was really kind of outrageous, or not the other day, but 2 days ago, that I read a news story today. About 2 days ago in Jersey, a medevac was going to pick up a patient at a hospital, and it had to get canceled because there were drones hovering in the landing spot.
Wow.
Which
that's
is like
weird.
That's outrageous, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, at some point, this needs to get shut down. So they're clearly out of control, and why they're being allowed to do this, to me, the only explanation is that the Pentagon at least knows who it is,
or it's aliens. That's the other.
Right. Or they're,
aliens that obey FAA regulations.
Exactly.
To be doing that.
If you wanted to blend in, you could. And I mean, apparently they're all over the world now. That's what somebody was saying earlier. I guess on TikTok. TikTok is really like taking off with it. And with the aliens, I don't know. I mean, my sister called me today. She said she was stocking up on rice and water because it could be for counter. Like, I can't.
I doubt it. I feel like the alien drones or ships would look really different from ours, but these look exactly like, or very similar to ours. It seems unlikely that they would be using the same model.
Right. And I hate space and aliens. I hate talking about aliens. I hate talking about space in general. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I, routinely, launch cannons at space Twitter because I hate them all. And I like to pick fights with them because I think that they are unhinged. And they're crazy. They're crazy. I made the mistake of saying that going to Mars was stupid. And
Oh yeah, I remember
oh
that.
my goodness, I was getting messages
Yeah,
in my like,
yeah,
how you have the DM. So you have like a regular DM folder that's like people that you follow, and then you have like a hey, this person follows you, you might know them, and then you have another. You have like the back DM folder.
yeah,
Do you have your DMs open?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, and that one's usually just like, like the Chinese porn bots or whatnot,
yeah, yeah. I get a lot of those.
you know, but when somebody gets really ugly, or they like
Yeah,
a lot, like that's where their messages get sent. And I was
yeah.
like a week later and I was still getting angry messages, like calling me like the worst things ever from the space nerds.
It's really weird the things that people get the most worked up about. I think I've done some tweets that I thought were like not very. I can't think of any examples right now, and people were so angry. And I'm like, really? This is the thing I get the.
Oh, I know. I'm like, so the space nerds are my mortal enemies, pretty much.
Okay. My husband is very into this space stuff, so if you
Okay.
ever meet him,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
tell him to tamp down on it.
Yeah. I know.
So
It's so funny because I know, I mean, it's a lonely road that I walk hating. Trust me, it's not a popular position. But
so final words on the drones. Are we?
um, so the FBI's and then in the hot seat. Oh, final.
Yeah,
So right before we came
yeah.
on, Ian Carroll, if you are into X or TikTok, he's really great, podcaster guy. He pulled up or he posted something from Reddit earlier, and this guy claims, of course we don't know if this is true or not, but he claims he's a 25-year radar operator for a major agency, and he says, I just thought I'd let you know what's been going on these past few weeks. The drones are part of a military drill being conducted by Space Force. So everything is in a need to know basis. That's why there's so much confusion. He says that they're getting ready for a full lockout drill scheduled to take place between now and Christmas. And they're going to that's where these operations involve the turnover of all radio and radar aircraft communications to the military for several hours. This is in conjunction with scheduled satellite launches, off the books things. So I don't know. Of course, I went and looked up, where they have Space Force bases and whatnot. Obviously, they could, fly the drones from anywhere, but there's not that many. It's really kind of hubbed in Colorado. So that would be a weird space for them.
Interesting. Yeah.
S to me is Jersey. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, but again, I
Well,
do think it's something the government knows,
yeah.
Yeah. And so they just don't want to say, but it's
Yeah.
not the Iranians. That is, I would
And
put,
I'm pretty sure it's not aliens either.
yeah, I would put money on it being aliens over the Iranians, though.
Yeah,
But
right.
100%.
Yeah.
Even, it is not the Iranians. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's about it on that. Yeah. It's a slow
So should
news.
we?
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a slow news day, which is probably why everyone's been losing their minds over Candace Owens's
Yes.
of the USS Liberty veteran. So if you want to,
That's right. Sure. So for those who don't know, in 1967, the U.S. spy ship, they call it, I guess, the USS Liberty, was in they were in the Mediterranean, and they were attacked by Israeli ships. Or sorry, Israelis. There was like really no question. I think they saw Stars of David and stuff like that. And it was a pretty long attack. I think it went on for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And it involved napalm and I can't even remember explosives. And,
yeah,
a lot of 34 people died. And
yeah, 170 wounded.
yeah, and it took 17 hours for rescuers to get to them, even though it should have only taken, I believe it was 40 minutes. And there are a lot of questions. Apparently, the servicemen were also told to be quiet about the incident. And Candace Owens, who most people probably know who she is, she's sort of considered a right-wing influencer who since October 7th has departed from most of her cohort for being critical of Israel's so-called war in Gaza. I don't really call it a war, it's more of a massacre. But she has opposed it, and she's taken a lot of heat for that. So in any event, this survivor of the USS Liberty wrote her a letter about what had happened and how there'd been a cover-up, and he hadn't really been able to talk about it, and the media hadn't covered what had happened. And the reason for this is pretty obvious. Israel's our ally. And I believe they claimed at the time that it was an accident, that they thought the ship was Egyptian. But as his name is Phil Turney, I think, as he said, there were flags clearly flying. It was clearly marked. It was really not a mistake that could believably have been made. So this has been, I think Candace Owens said it was her most viewed video ever. She got like 2 million views in 24 hours. It's stirring all kinds of social media debates. And, Mel's been posting about it and gotten some some interesting takes. Apparently, according to some right-wing influencers, the biggest issue is that Candace Owens doesn't know how to pronounce napalm.
Who is that guy? It's a
Coleman Hughes. Yeah, he's like an anti-woke black guy. He got sort of famous for taking on wokeness as a young black man. I think he was at Columbia. He's kind of a mediocre thinker, in my opinion. He's fine. He's like 26. For 26, he's fine. He's written a bunch of books, but he's obviously made his brand this way. And Barry Weiss platforms him a lot. Earlier on in the Gaza war, I heard he did some analysis of the civilian casualties in Gaza to argue that what Israel was doing was fine. And people were lots of people I knew were citing this. And I was like, really? You're not going to listen to all the Middle East scholars, all of the people who've been studying this forever, who understand the background, who understand everything that's been going on. You're going to cite some 26-year-old who made his brand on being anti-woke, really? So that's what I know about Coleman Hughes.
So you just jogged my memory.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier called him the Black Lex Friedman, and I thought that was so apt because I was like, oh my, where did these guys come from? Number one, I don't know where either one of them came from, and they are so kind of dull. I was just going through his I was scrolling through because I didn't know who he was, and it was I thought his commentary was so lame on the USS Liberty. If you just
extremely.
If you just don't have, because basically all he said was he quote tweeted my tweet of Candace's clip, which was her reading the letter that Phil Turney had written to her, which was a really powerful letter, I thought. And it actually he was a little bit mocking me in that I didn't know that the attack on the Liberty, if you read up on it, or if you just read regular news stories, it kind of gets put off like it was just a torpedo was shot into the ship and then that was it, right? And it was a mistake, right? And I know that it was this hours long multi-stage, started with an air attack which lasted for 25 minutes, and then they followed up with these ships shooting these torpedoes, and which is again, it's how that doesn't sound like an accident. I don't understand how this could be an accident,
No.
And then to come to find out that the ship that they said that they thought was the Egyptian ship, that our ship was 200 feet longer than what the Egyptian ship would have been. The Egyptians just did not have a ship anywhere near the size of our ship. Nothing close. So, that was kind of BS flag thrown right away.
Yeah.
And, but so it was such a powerful letter that he wrote, and she just read it verbatim, and then she interviewed him. But to see the meltdown over it, I mean, from people just because it actually is it is hard to refute what he says. He details it so well. You can tell because he's been telling this story for 50 years. He's got it. He knows his stuff, and he has. So, but what was interesting to find out was the way that the American government, not even necessarily, I mean, obviously the Israelis are covering their own asses, but the way that the American government has fallen all over itself to cover for them, which is the infuriating thing for me. Yeah.
Right. From what I understand, Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'm not going to, I don't care about a bunch of dead soldiers. We're protecting our ally, Israel.
Right. Yeah.
And
He said, I don't care about a bunch of dead sailors. I'm not going to embarrass my
sailors,
ally, Israel. And he said this
yeah.
when he called back the fighter jets who were dispatched as backup for the Liberty. So
right. And so a lot of people, when I've retweeted some of your stuff and Candace's stuff, and a lot of the comments I get are, this happened, whatever, I can't do math, but 60 years ago, who cares? But
yeah.
obviously, first of all, the idea that our government would cover up a targeted killing of our service members by a foreign government in order to protect that foreign government, I don't care when that happened. I want to know about it. And second, especially because we continue to have this extremely strong allegiance to this foreign government, Israel, that you're not allowed to question, or you're considered anti-Semitic or a bad person. And frankly, I think what goes on today is even worse. This is like the precursor, and Americans deserve to know.
Yeah. So yesterday when I was, doing some research on this, I came across this from 2004. This official inquiry into the attack on the
that was great. Yeah.
John Conyers, which is kind of funny if you don't know anything about John Conyers. He was he's a civil rights icon who from Detroit, who went to Congress. He was in Congress for like 50 years. He had a bit of a scandal. I can't remember. I think it was like 2009, 2010, where the FBI ended up raiding his house. I think it was, or his office, and they found like a bunch of money in the freezer. That's the only detail I really remember from it. But he got censored by he didn't get arrested or charged with anything, but he did get censored. So there was some controversy. So he is, but this is way before that. This is 2004. Yeah. He put out, and he submitted it. He read the whole thing on the floor of the House, and then he submitted it into the official record, which is a big deal, And but what I thought, so real quick, I'll read this. He's talking about the findings of their inquiry, and he says,
and just to be clear, who conducted the investigation? It was like a committee, or
it was a committee that was put together, and it included, I've got all of it. Sorry, I tried to send it to
I think that's good enough. We're just confirming it's not like some random,
No. I mean, it included testimony from like the former ambassador to to Lebanon at the time, Dwight Porter, the Secretary of State, commanding admirals for the Navy, like legitimate. These were not just randos, and they weren't even just sailors. These were like actual people in charge. And there's a mountain of evidence out there. It just kind of has to all get put together. But what I just found so fascinating was the admonishment of the American Congress, that the way our politicians are clearly had this fealty towards this foreign nation and how dangerous this is. And he says in the finding 8, he says that due to the influence of Israel's powerful supporters in the United States, the White House deliberately covered up the facts of this attack from the American people. Finding 9, that due to the continuing pressure by the pro-Israel lobby in the United States, this attack remains the only serious naval incident that has never been thoroughly investigated by Congress. To this day, no surviving crew member has been permitted to be officially and publicly testify about the attack. Finding 10, that there has been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history. The existence of such a cover-up is now supported by statements of Rear Admiral Merlin Starling, former Judge Advocate General of the Navy, Captain Ward Boston, the Chief Counsel of the Navy's 67 Court of Inquiry of the Liberty attack. There's 2 more. Finding 11, that the truth about Israel's attack and subsequent White House cover-up continues to be officially concealed from the American people to the present day and is a national disgrace.
Wow.
And 12, that a danger to our national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate American interests to those of any foreign nation, and specifically are unwilling to challenge Israel's interests when they conflict with American interests. This policy, evidenced by the failure to defend the USS Liberty in the subsequent official cover-up of the Israeli attack, endangers the safety of Americans and the security of the United States.
Wow. And I mean, if anything, things are even worse today. Although
1,000
I
times
will
worse.
say there's something to be said for the fact that people in Congress and, appointed to the executive branch like Elise Stefanik and Brian Mast basically openly say that they're loyal to this foreign government. This would have been George Washington's nightmare. He warned against the issue of
treason. Absolutely.
Look, you can't, I mean, you can't uncritically say that this other country is our ally, and no matter what they do, we're our ally. That's not how allegiances work. If it's serving America at a certain point in time, when it comes to our own financial interests, our national security interests, our beliefs about human rights, then fine. But when it's no longer serving those interests and you just have this allegiance, that's treason. All these people, in my opinion, should be charged with treason, and I hope that in my lifetime they will be. That's my dream.
Right. I don't even, all I need you to do is to only care about the best interests of America. And it's clear, I don't even need them to be hostile or anything like that. I genuinely, I want to get to a place where they just don't care. If it works for us, it works for us. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Exactly.
And what we've just seen over, especially because the situation in Israel has become so untenable in a lot of ways, because they have to grow, they need expansion, they have religious zealots who have their own ideas about where, that it will become more and more untenable. And we will see this continue. You as an America have to sacrifice for us. And that,
I mean, people already are, whether they know it or not. It's coming out of your paycheck because we give them a lot of money to bomb children.
It's not just that. If you're a Republican voter, there is not a single priority that you care about for this country that our politicians, that Republican politicians, will not shelve, will not sabotage, will not trade if it means that they can serve the interests of Israel. Not a single one.
And I mean, we saw that 100% with free speech, where all these Republican people Congress people who claim to care about free speech during COVID, when it was, Hunter Biden laptop and COVID issues and, pro-Trump speech being censored, which I should not have been censored. I'm absolutely against that. I've challenged that in court. But all of those same people then trying to shut down protests on campus because, of anti-Semitism, and they've been successful. My father's actually a college professor, and he said, like, protests are over. There are no more protests. Like, they won. They dragged these, presidents of the universities who, like, I'm not their biggest fans, whatever. I have many problems with them, but, they humiliated them. They got, basically forced a lot of them to resign, and they effectively scared all of the administrations of campuses into shutting down protests, which have been sort of really part of American culture for many decades, at least since the Vietnam War, if not before that. And that's why we have a First Amendment. So we're literally sacrificing American values for this foreign country in order to protect this foreign country from criticism. It's beyond. And so back to the USS Liberty, before we log off, I wanted to briefly touch on what the theoretical motives were for why would Israel attack this ship, and if it wasn't an accident.
Right. So it was a spy ship. And the theories, there's a couple of them. So apparently Israel, because the 6-Day War was all sides, right? So it's Syria, and I think Lebanon, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. And so they're fighting all sides, right? And so there were some kind of atrocities taking place in the Golan Heights. I'm not super read up on that, so I don't know. I mean, it's a war, so I assume that there probably are some bad things happening there. But so some people claim it was that they had picked up recordings, or they had heard that, and then other people, I guess, they were kicking people out of the Sinai. Also, they claimed that they had caught evidence of that. I don't actually buy
I
that.
also, another theory I heard was that they wanted Americans to think that Egypt was attacking them.
Right. So the most
And
prominent theory is that so those are like the little theories. And then the most
yeah,
prominent one is that they wanted basically they wanted it to be a false flag, sink it because the when the air raid happened, the air raid was conducted by fighter jets that had been blacked out. Right. They actually didn't
right,
weren't more as Israeli, and they they were going to sink the ship, kill all the sailors, and then blame it on Egypt. And then why would they do that, right? Because of course the Israeli, advocates would say, well, why they, it was a 6-day war, we won, right?
right,
And
right,
I would probably say, well, because they wanted more land, because this actually
yeah,
goes back to
right,
being serious, the Greater Israel Project, and understanding that Israel has never defined its own borders. And the reason that they refuse to define them is because those borders, what they really want, are from the Euphrates to down to the Sinai. And so
right,
that's the real thing. So at any time, they're going to do what they can to get more land. And
yeah,
I actually think that I think that that's a pretty easy um,
yeah.
explanation, and it makes just as much sense as them claiming that oh, whoopsie daisy, we didn't know.
Right.
Nine,
Well, I guess one of the upsides of it being a slow news week, in addition to it meaning not terrible things are happening to too many people, although Syria is a mess, but that's another story, is
yeah,
we get to hear about these events that took place a long time ago, and I think are still relevant. And I think that it's touching a nerve. I think with a lot of people, they're
definitely.
saying, "Wait a second, why does this country have so much influence over us, and why are politicians sacrificing our interests and literally sacrificing us for this foreign country?" And I think that's why Candace's video got so much interest.
Something that really irked me was Phil Turney saying that the survivors of the Liberty, they hold a memorial every June
Right.
8th at in Arlington, or they have like I guess they have a monument. He said that not a single member of Congress has ever once attended.
I saw that, which is
And
shocking.
so these losers go to everything.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
idea that they would not attend a memorial for fallen sailors is just so asinine to me.
how
Like,
many IDF funerals do you think they've gone to? Funerals of IDF soldiers.
you got Elise Stefanik has quite literally
Yeah,
been tweeting about the hostages
yeah,
for what 400 something days every single day.
yeah,
That's all she tweets about.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but we can't get a single member of Congress to go for an hour up to Arlington. Like
yeah.
that's wrong.
It is shameful, and I think things are changing. But
Yeah, hopefully, yep. So
well,
very good.
this
Okay,
was
well,
great conversation, and we'll have
yep,
more of them.
yep. And we'll see you guys soon.
I'll
Bye.
I'll I'll stop recording. Hang on. Okay. I thought that was good. Sorry
Oh yeah.
about the fact we had to do it twice.
Oh no,
Oh wait,
no,
I
no.
didn't.